Hello, Forrest Fenn community. I am going to strive to give more evidence of my solution, but first I'd like to make an analogy. The condition we find ourselves in with the closure and solve of this treasure hunt is something like this. Powers that be have put a whole bunch of solves and made a mockery of the end of the thrill of the chase. Not to mention the 7%ers that have put their solves out and can't be reasoned with at all. So we all become conditioned to a bunch of crappy endings, and when the true solution comes along, nobody believes it. Well, I'm not the powers that be, and I just might be one of the 7%ers, but I would appreciate it if you would allow me to present my case and would have an open mind to the possibility that I do have the correct solve. Thank you for your consideration. And if you've already made up your mind, then you haven't done what I've asked. Today I will concentrate on the poem and show you how it works with the patterns. The patterns in which I tried to show in my last video. I did put out a video about a year plus ago, and in that video I showed how to get to the blaze. I'm only going to concentrate in this video on the clues from the blaze onward. First, I will show that the poem is a mirror, or that it contains clues to a mirror. So here's the poem right here. And in this poem we have 6 stanzas. And if you do 1, 2, 3, that's 3, and then 1, 2, 3, there's a mirror in itself. And then another mirror that's contained in here is if you come to line 13, which contains the blaze, and you were to eliminate this line right here, take it and just keep it as the blaze line, then if you were to count the words from here to the end, you get 79 words, and that's an important clue. And if you were to count from here or here to the end, you get 79, another mirror. There is another mirror that's very important in the solution, is if you count the first 2 lines from the blaze right here, you get 13. And then on this side, if you count the first 2 lines here, you get 13. And then if you count the words that are left over, of course, from this line to the end, you get 66. And then if you count from here to there, you get 66. And that's a mirror and the blaze is in the middle, and you have a mirror here and a mirror there with imagination. On page 6 of The Thrill of the Chase, it reads, "When my wife built our house, she put a skylight in my bathroom flat above the shower. It was a design deficiency, but she didn't have to stand there and see, so she didn't care." So this is a hint to a mirror, because when it's dark at night and you look up at a skylight, it reflects your image. But there is another angle to this just being a mirror. It's showing you to look down on the mirror from above. If you go to page 58 in The Thrill of the Chase, there's a picture of Forrest on his horse, and he's actually sitting on the horse backwards, and his horse is facing that way. That's a hint to a mirror. But the other one is on page 3 of Too Far to Walk, where he's sitting the right way and the blaze is on his forehead and he's looking one direction. In Too Far to Walk, it is actually a mirror image. It's opposite. On page 31 of The Thrill of the Chase, there's a picture of Forrest milking the cow with the 6 cats, and they all are hints with the 4-legged stool. If you get the picture by Porter Rockwell, the cow is looking the opposite direction, and the lady is sitting on the opposite. It's a mirror image, except for the cats. If you go to Too Far to Walk on page 44, it's talking about his mother, I believe. Yep, Lily Gay Simpson. Anyway, she's a twin, so that's another hint to a mirror, and it's on page 44 and 45. If you go to page 154, there's a picture of the artist that drew this picture while looking into a mirror, and it's only half of his face, pretty much, and face is a clue because face has a word value of 15, and that's also an end number. Also in Too Far to Walk on page 98, there's Forrest jumping off of a cliff onto a pine tree to get down the cliff. If you turn to page 100, there's a picture of the cliff, and it's an exact mirror. If you look at the little figurines in the face of the cliff, they're on both sides. It's not a perfect one. Yes, you got to use some imagination. And then at the bottom, there's one of his boots, and that boot also has an X in it with imagination, and it matches exactly the boot on page 98 of Forrest Fenn jumping to the tree. And that's a clue. You have to mirror the two ends, or you got to mirror. It's a mirror, and there's a shoe on each end of that mirror. So now I have shown you that the mirror is in the poem, and the mirror is in his books, giving you hints to the clues of the poem. Now I'm going to go through the poem and show you step by step some of the clues to figuring out from the blaze and then from the blaze on down. Okay, it goes, if you've been wise and found the blaze. And so what we need to do is, how do we figure out what the blaze is? Well, first of all, we had to figure out this to get to the area where the blaze is. But we're not going into that. But once we arrive to the right area, we got to go, how are we going to figure out what the blaze is? Well, the blaze, there are numbers that apply to the blaze, and one of the numbers that apply to the blaze is 13, because this is the 13th line in the poem. Anyway, 13. The other number that applies is if you were to count all the letters in this line that contains the blaze, you get the number 32, and that's counting commas. And then I will explain how do you know that commas are important. Well, let's go look at the book and see if that helps us. I'm going to just do a couple on commas, but if you go in the book Once Upon a While and you go to the Me and Dizzy Dean chapter on page 176, if you read the last little bit in here, and this chapter was added to the revised edition, and 179 is a clue to the end, and it goes, I've been criticized for the way that I write and use words to say it too much, mix verbs, tense, and commas wrong, and I can't spell. I just read through my story above about Dizzy Dean and removed all the commas. I feel so good I may just go get myself another Dr. Pepper. Anyway, that's a hint that abbreviation's important, and we ought to pay attention to it, and he definitely mentions commas there. If you go into the book cover on the very back, it goes into another thing about punctuation. Jessica Jenkins, who fought bravely with the author about where the commas were supposed to go while correcting his verb tenses. Anyway, that just goes into detail, telling us that punctuation is important. And it isn't giving us a clue to take them out. It's telling us that they're important. And usually a lot of things that Forrest Fenn says are opposite, because he gives you hints to that in the books too, about things being backwards. Also in the scrapbooks, scrapbook 73 talks about grammar. And then in scrapbook 179, Forrest Fenn shares some of his techniques and philosophies regarding his style of writing. And then there is the scrapbook about Dizzy Dean in here. And that is scrapbook 188. So he's giving us hints about using the commas is the way that I did it. And there's places where you take out the comma, but you got to know which way, and you got to experiment both ways to figure it out. So in the poem here, I counted this comma, and that's how I got to 32. And so with this, we can find a number for the blaze. Some of it is 13, and 32 is what we've come up with so far. So here we are, and now we've been wise and we've found the blaze. And the blaze is 13 and 32. And I will go into some of the hints in the book, but we found the numbers of the blaze in the poem, and now I'm going to show you that they are in the books. If you go to the Thrill of the on page 23, anyway, on page 23, it goes, the good part was that I wasn't even smart enough to know I wasn't very bright until... Anyway, so the clue that I get from this is Forrest Fenn is saying that he wasn't very bright, but he is the blaze. So there's an opposite again. And then on page 22, he's kneeling there and he is the blaze. And it goes, that's me at age 13, thinking about starting 7th grade. So we got some hints there about him being the blaze and numbers. In The Thrill of the Chase on page 65, we read, we found the buffalo, but it goes, we found it about 7 miles west of town in a large sagebrush flats that had stands of pine trees everywhere. And in this, you can get, sage is another word for wise, and if you're wise and found the blaze, so the blaze is 7. And then if you turn to page 89 in The Thrill of the Chase, and at the bottom you read, it goes, James Swisher, the forward air control who had directed my flight that the night before, came looking for me. From 7 miles away, he had been the first to say I was on fire. That is another hint to Forrest Fenn being the blaze. There's other hints in the scrapbook where Forrest Fenn calls himself Forest Fire. And if you calculate the word value for Forest Fire, it comes to 139, and that actually gives us another number. And then if you were to do the word value of Fenn, you get the word value of 39, and that's another blaze. So now we're going to so you find those. I've shown you that you can find a lot of these numbers in the poem, and now we've found a lot of these numbers in the book.